Morning, everyone. My name's Bob, and I'm an addict.
Hi, Bob.
And if I haven't told you this morning that I love you, I really do. Relapse is not a requirement. I love the name of that title because I don't believe we have to relapse in order to find this program. I also don't want to give anybody the idea that I feel that we're in some sort of a competition for clean time either, because I don't believe that. This is not some sort of a clean time Olympics where everybody is striving for the gold medal. I believe that what I have is a chronic relapsing disease. My addiction is such a disease that it is not only insidious, it is not only omnipresent, but it is also very patient. And it's very patient for me to become complacent in my recovery. And it's there, and it's with me, and right now, today, it's arrested. But there's a whole theory of thought that some people hold, I don't necessarily agree with that has to do with the idea that the farther one gets from their last using, from their last run, the closer one gets to their next one. That sounds kind of interesting when you first take a look at it, but I don't necessarily think that holds true. I do believe something is true, and that is that if I have forgotten the horrors of the addiction, if I have failed to keep it green, as they say in the program, then I may be destined to relive it. Because there is something about remembering what it was like that keeps me, it's kind of like keeps me with a blowtorch to my rear end, trying to find out how I'm going to stay clean in this beautiful program of recovery. I have a wonderful friend of mine in New York who says that Narcotics Anonymous is about not doing drugs. And that's true. And that's simple, and that's right in point, because drugs are the things that's going to cause the relapse. I don't do anything today that's going to jeopardize my recovery. I believe that my recovery is a gift from God. I have this wonderful feeling. I opened up one of my meditation books this morning, and as I was meditating, right up at the top of it, there was a little thing from out of the Bible. And realizing the Bible is not conference approved, I still wanted to jot that down. It said up at the top of this meditation book, it says, "He brought me out into an open place. He rescued me because he delighted in me." That's kind of the sense of the way I feel about recovery. I have been rescued from having to chase after the drugs. I have been rescued to the point where I don't have to lie, I don't have to cheat, I don't have to steal, I don't have to be dishonest with me. I don't have to do those things that disgraced myself and my profession anymore. You know, that's rescuing. That's pulling me out of the muck of addiction and setting me up onto dry land and dusting me off and says, "You're all right. You're a good person. You're my handiwork." And I don't want to ever do anything that's going to jeopardize that, you know. It's a little like Brother Rick said in his talk Thursday night. If any of you heard Brother Rick down at the River Gate, he was telling about the fox and the rabbit. And you know, the fox is always chasing the rabbit, but the fox very seldom ever catches the rabbit. And there's a difference there. Because the fox is running after the rabbit for his supper, the rabbit is running for his life. And that's the way that's the style and the desperation and the intensity that I feel that I need to put into my own recovery. There's the old story about the baby and the sponsor walking along the beach, and the baby's saying to his sponsor, he says, "Tell me about the third step." And the sponsor keeps saying, "Well, I don't know whether you're ready or not." To make a long story short, the sponsor takes the baby out in the water and he holds his head down under the water, and he holds it under the water until the baby is just about ready to just, explode and open his lungs and take in that water, and he pulls him out. And the baby looks up and says, "You're trying to kill me, you're trying to kill me," And the whole sense of that is, the sponsor says, "Well, now, it's that feeling just before I let you up. That striving, that intense, I'm going to die or I'm going to live type of feeling, which characterizes this whole business of the third step." It's that desire. We have only one qualification for membership in our program, and that has to do with the desire not to use. Desire to me is not anything wishy-washy, I can tell you. Desire to me is a screaming Mimi itch for recovery. Desire to me is by God, I want recovery more than I want anything else in the whole wide world. More than I want a job, more than I want a wife, more than I want this, that, or the next thing. I have so many of my babies today that want to treat, for example, going to meetings as something on the same par of going to Kiwanis or to Rotary or to the JCs it's something they do. You have your week filled up. Well, on Monday night I go to my thises, and my Tuesday nights I go to that, and on Wednesday night I go to NA, And it gets me so boiled up that I get real angry with that sort of course, they don't stay around usually too long enough to get by that. But the fact of the matter is that this is a very wonderful path, a journey in recovery. And I want all the goodies there is to be offered here. I've been very, very lucky. I have not found it necessary to relapse. And that's not to say that I'm any better. That's not to say that I don't say that with any smugness at all. Because I sponsor a lot of people who have found it necessary to relapse. And have found it necessary to relapse not only once or twice, but have found it necessary to relapse coming in and out of the rooms as in a revolving door. And the only right thing they can do, in my opinion, is to keep coming back. And I say that to everyone. At the end of the meeting, everybody always says that. But I like to give, I've made it a point to I love hugs. And I try to give everybody a hug in the meetings at the end of the meeting. And when I give them a hug, I always tell them, keep coming back. Because there is a beautiful grain of truth in that. There is something that happens. I don't know whether you guys realize it or not, but I do. There is something that happens in the meetings. It's a combination of working the steps. It's a combination of being together in the same room, trying to each of us trying to do the same thing, to stay clean and to help other addicts to achieve recovery. There is something that happens in the meeting when we see a new person come back. We see that guilt just dripping off. We see that bewilderment. We see that confusion that comes as they come back in the door. I always like to ask them. I say, there's two questions I like to ask when somebody's coming back after a relapse. The first question that I ask them is, what was the topic of the meeting the night before? To this day, only one person has ever told me the answer to that question. They could not remember the topic of that meeting. The second question that I ask them is, what was the topic of the meditation book that you read that morning? And to this day, nobody has been able to answer that question. I'm not trying to indicate to anyone that by going to meetings and reading meditation books you're going to stay clean and achieve any level of recovery, because I think there's more to it than that. But in order to work one's program, I've got to be at the meeting. There's no substitute for the meetings, because it's there that I get an opportunity to practice my steps. It is there in the meeting that I get the opportunity to see what happens to those who don't go to meetings. The problem with those who don't go to meetings are they are not there at the meetings to find out what happens to those who don't go to meetings. And that's just the way it works. I'm sure that everybody has similar experiences, but there have been those meetings which have saved my bacon. There have been those meetings which I have gone to for some reason with an angry sort of an arrogance, saying, by God, if you don't work, I'm going to go out and pick up after the meeting. I've been to those, and you know what? They've always worked. Very seldom, if ever, do I ever leave a meeting feeling worse than when I came in. There is something that transpires at the meeting. It has something to do with my sharing with you and you sharing with me in a common bond. And I can go into a meeting feeling lower than whale shit at the bottom of the ocean, and coming out just feeling like I'm God's handiwork, and it's going to be all right, you know. Meetings are very, very important to me, and I go to lots of them. Sponsorship. My sponsor hears from me daily. There is hardly a day that goes by that I do not contact my sponsor, either in person or by telephone. And you know, there's really not that much going on in my life at any given time. Steps seem to take care of that. But there is something about one addict, the therapeutic value of one addict working with another, that is without parallel. There is something reassuring just to buy a voice on the other end of the telephone. There is something that reaffirms with me what I'm trying to do, which is to recover from the disease of addiction. And the minute I share with another addict, whether he be my sponsor, or whether he be a baby, or whether he be a friend of any kind in the program, or out of the program, my 12th step does not say tried to carry the message to those addicts who pick up the phone and call the hotline. My 12th step talks about trying to carry the message to addicts, period, at any time or any place. And I'm a lawyer by profession, and I practice general law in a little place in Missouri. And there's not a single person who's a member of the Jasper County Bar Association that does not know of my recovery. And there's not a single judge that I practice in front of who is not fully aware of the recovery from my addiction. And I get things like a judge calling me up on the telephone and saying, come on over. And I had that happen to me, well, it's been a little while ago now, but I had one judge in particular, a fellow by the name of Hanging Herbert. And that old boy had barred me from practicing in his courtroom when I was loaded. I used to give some of the greatest jury summations in the whole wide world. Unfortunately, the jury wasn't there, and I wasn't either. But he calls me over, and he asks my opinion about what we need to do about this other lawyer who's acting just like I used to act. And hopefully, you know, I can share some of my recovery with this lawyer. And that's a beautiful thing. Now, not every member of the Jasper County Bar happens to have my disease, but they know who to call when the time comes, when they have a problem, either in their family or their client or whatever. They know who to call, and so I get lots of calls, and they ask me about what to do about such and such, and I'm glad to share my experience with them. That's a beautiful part of my life today, is the privilege of giving to others what has been so easily given to me. My recovery has been marked with a lot of growth and a lot of pain. It has been marked with indescribable joy. It has been marked with hope and it has been marked with the most fantastic serenity that I've ever achieved. There is more to this program, of course, than just not using. If that were the case, I'd be back out there amongst them. There is so much more. There is so much more joy and happiness and the ability to live my life as an honest, where I can look you in the eye. I didn't used to. When I came in the program, boy, my head was pointed right directly down to the floor because I had not taken the 5th step or the 8th and 9th steps, and I was covered with guilt, and I did not like myself. Today I like myself. Today I'm gentle on me. I do nothing which is going to in any way put me down, you know. And I found that through the steps of this wonderful program. I love this program of Narcotics Anonymous with all my heart. And I'm a member of the very best group in the whole world of Narcotics Anonymous. And that's the 5th Tradition group in Joplin, Missouri. There's a member of the 5th Tradition group. And if your group is not the best group in the whole wide world of Narcotics Anonymous, then you need to find another group that is, because there's lots of them around. And we're growing at a wonderful pace. And it's a beautiful journey on recovery. I'll share with you a couple of traps that happened in my recovery. Trap number 1 is the old playgrounds and playmates. You keep going to the same old barber shop, you get a haircut, you know. And I learned that in spades. One time I was at a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous, and one of my old hope-to-die dope fiend lady friends came to the meeting, and she was really buzzing when she got there. Incidentally, I'm an old line speed freak. Well, I did everything really. It doesn't make any difference what the drug it was. But she was kind of buzzing so much that I was getting a contact high just sitting next to her in the meeting, you know, getting like that. And she was asking me about the program, and my old ego swelled up, and that wasn't the only thing that swelled up. And I began to say, gee, I'd sure like to take you home and tell you more about this wonderful program of recovery. And as we were riding to her house, she was telling me about who all was inside the house. And they had just come from a burglary. And guess what all they had in the house? And she began naming off these different drugs. And as I was driving, I had marvelous ideas in my mind of pictures such as, when I get in there, I'm going to share with all of my old hope-to-die dope fiend friends of the marvels and the recovery of Narcotics Anonymous. And I may even, for good measure, help some of them get off, as in old times. And I got out and I walked up to the door, and the hand of God stopped me. And he says, man, you walk in that door and you're going to be done. And I don't know how I did it. It was obviously not me. It was obviously God. But I mumbled some sort of lame excuse about having another appointment somewhere, and I got in my car and I drove directly to my sponsor's house. And I got to my sponsor's house, and I sat out in front of my sponsor's house for a good 10 or 15 minutes because I was unable to take my hands off the steering wheel. They were clenched so tightly around the steering wheel. That was saved by a power greater than I, certainly was rescued by a power that was absolutely greater than I. So I learned that very, very easily on. But this business of wanting to pick up this desire that picks up this disease that comes back, it's really kind of interesting. I was cruising along in my recovery, doing real well, and I'd gotten my clientele back, and things were running real fine, and the family was back, and everybody was going along and happy and joyous and carrying on. And I got sued for $2 million. And immediately the sheriff or the marshal came in and brought me the suit papers. And they alleged that I had, in order to make a long story short, I was involved in some sort of a conspiracy to sell drugs And as a result of that, I conspired to misrepresent a client. And the fear of the past, it was part of the wreckage of the past, reaching up there and grabbing a hold of my rear end and saying, aha, gotcha. I'm thankful for that thing which happened, because I was given the opportunity to work some steps. I was given the opportunity to be honest. I was given the opportunity to be truthful, because without my testimony, they never could have made their allegations stand up, because I was the only witness that had any credibility at all. And I was sure, you see, I was indicted by a grand jury many years before for obtaining controlled substances by fraud. And the whole smear of my picture on the paper, and I live in a small town, and the whole idea of publicity coming back about my addiction, hurting my family, really bothered me. And the newspapers in the small town, they were interested in, and the news media was interested in covering this big stuff to them. And so the time came for me to testify. And the newspapers and the television cameras had shown up in the courtroom, and they were ready for this big juicy story about me and cocaine in this motel with these people. And they were all waiting right there, and I finally told my story and gave my testimony. And on the day that I was called to give my testimony, nobody from the news media showed up. It's one of those miracles that happen in recovery. It gave me an opportunity to practice acceptance in this program. It gave me an opportunity to learn what we were talking about in step 3. It gave me an opportunity to find and to trust in a power greater than myself. That's another trap. Be wary of those things which reach up from the past. And they come in and they grab a hold. And they give you an opportunity to practice this program. I have been described by some of my babies as being a cold son of a gun. And I have a favorite saying. And it sounds real hokey and it sounds real trite, but it works. When they come to me and something bad has happened, and they have their terrible problem, I always look at them and I smile and I say, when God hands you a lemon, make lemonade. And there is something very true in that. This business of living, life is like that. Things come along, death, tragedy, broken relationships. Those things happen. Shit happens in the program. And it's okay for those things to happen, because they're really blessings in disguise. They give me an opportunity to work a program. They give me an opportunity to practice the steps of this beautiful program. I want to say a little bit about this business of total abstinence being the key to recovery. I believe that with all my heart and soul. As I stand before you, I get nervous. My gut just goes tense when I hear somebody say to me, well, I've had a bad back, or I've had an accident, or I've had this, or I've had that. And they come up with some sort of reason for having a prescription. And I have seen people in this program who have very serious disease. And I'm not a martyr. I suppose if I'd go break my leg or be in an automobile accident, I'd probably use a mood changer too. But there is something that I know deep down inside me, with all the very fiber of my being, I know that abstinence is the key to recovery. And man, I would just as soon err on the side of being radical and on the side of being absolute than I would take the chance and use something in this program. There are so many things, the cough medicines, the antihistamines. When I came into this program, I had some vitamins left over from before, vitamins don't work when your liver's too toxic anyway. It doesn't make any difference. But I had these vitamins, and I started popping vitamins in the morning. And I kept feeling guilty, and I couldn't understand why I felt guilty. My sponsor told me, he says, it's the business of taking pills. You're looking for something outside yourself. You're looking for something chemical to make you okay inside. That was a lesson that I learned early. There was another experience that I'll share with you about this when I came home from treatment. It was in the summertime. And in the fall came around, and I put on a sport coat, and I reached inside my pocket, and I pulled out 2 Quaaludes. And I looked at them, and I was maybe 6 months, 4 or 5 months clean at that time. I looked at those Quaaludes, and I said, well, I'm not ever going to take them, but I think what I'll do is I'll just set them up here in my dresser drawer in my old jewelry case. And I did. And I said, well, my mind told me that perhaps in an emergency, I might still be able to use those 2 Quaaludes. And you know what happened? I had an emergency happen that very night because I couldn't sleep. And I tossed and I turned and I rolled around, and I kept saying, God, I've been sleeping like a log ever since I got back from treatment. I don't understand this business. Why am I still awake tonight? And then it dawned on me that those 2 little Quaaludes in my jewelry box, in my drawer, in my dresser, was fucking with my life. And the sense of relief when I flushed those 2 little Quaaludes was the biggest thing that ever happened to me. This program is absolutely fantastic because it offers so much in the way of an opportunity to help others. I don't know about the rest of you, but I find that service work for me is not only a growing experience, because God knows you grow with service, but it adds a depth to my program, the likes of which I could not begin to tell you. And so I would encourage you, as a part of a relapse prevention program, to jump into service work with both feet. I used to feel in times that the program needed me. Service work needed me. I was God's answer to service work. A little humble pie there. But now I know that that's not the case. I needed the service work. I needed the service work to do my part in this program, to do my part to give back to the addict that still suffers, because that's what it's all about, As I stand before you today, I stand before you a very happy man. My life, which was shattered, is fantastically good. I want to share with you that today, this very day, my wife and I will be celebrating our 28th wedding anniversary. And it has only been since recovery that we have fallen in love with each other. We played all of the games that needed to be played for survival back in all the rest of the years. She would come chase and try to fix and do all those things that they do. But today we have genuine love and caring for each other, which is something I didn't have, because my disease robbed me of the ability to love another person. My disease robbed me of the privilege of reaching out for help. When I got to you, I had walls a mile thick, and you hugged me and you told me to keep coming back. One of the first things I had to do in this program was to go around and to ask for help. That was one of the things that brought my walls tumbling back down and allowed me to be really human again, because asking for help is the hardest thing that I ever had to do. Ask another human being, will you help me? And that's what broke the tears. Until that time, I had not cried a single tear for anything. I was angry and I was arrogant for years and years and years. That's what brought out the tears. And I'm so very grateful for the ability to tear up today. You know, that's really precious. My wife and I lost a little baby, 15 days old. And I carried that dead little baby into that emergency room of that hospital. And I swore that there was no God, and I got very angry with God. And I didn't feel a thing for the next 15 years of my life, because nothing else was going to hurt me. And it was only through your love, and it was only through your caring, that I am able today to feel, and to feel so deeply. You know, I would stuff a feeling so quick it'd just make your head swim. That's why it's a miracle of recovery. And believe you me, this program is a program of miracles. We're all here. We're all sitting in this room today. We're all filled with God's love today. I'd like to turn this over and give everybody else a chance to share with me now. Thank you so much for letting me share. I love you.
Definitely wasn't me. I